Skyforge is, or depending on when you're watching this video, was an action combat MMORPG developed by Alod's team and Obsidian Entertainment back in 2015. This was peak MMO cash grab era and part of what kept Obsidian afloat. In Skyforge, you play as a newly born immortal, only a small army of devout worshippers away from becoming a fully fledged god across 19 playable classes. Unfortunately, immortality didn't extend to the Skyforge itself, as it managed to stay live for just over a decade before its final closing date on September 3rd, 2025. During its tenure, it passed hands through a few developers and publishers, most noteworthy being My.com, whose portfolio looks like one of those developers where games go to have their player bases milked for every possible cent before wilting and dying. So before the game shuts down, I decided to take one last look at the state of it, and see if we can pick up a few things about what they did right, and probably a lot of things about what went wrong. Starting up the game throws us to a pretty decent character creator with godlike proportions. However, nothing is truly more powerful than rocking a dad bod with pure confidence. Remember, you can't be shamed when you have none. One thing I did really like here is you can change the weight of your movement animations and stances. I threw on a first and last name and then off we go into the prologue.
Alright, listen up. We're heading for Ionor. Our mission is to clear the town of enemies and evacuate the civilians.
To my pleasant surprise, the game is fully voice acted, and this was before the AI voice acting era, just bad voice acting. At least when the lines actually decided to play. Despite literally just arriving with a squad, I set off on my own to deal with the Verds and Carrions assaulting the town. Combat is introduced with a basic left-click combo and a right-click to do a special ability that makes it seem way too clear I'm not just a common grunt. If they couldn't tell that by the fact that I'm the only one without a helmet, maybe swinging my sword hard enough to throw lightning through the air would. Regardless, I push forward and save a civilian, then even more civilians trapped in a barn only to come under attack. After taking down the overgrown Skaven, the squad decides to show up, followed by some enemy reinforcements. We do an epic slow-mo 300 style battle sequence, only to promptly get slaughtered after a mysterious masked man with a gruff voice commanding the Verds takes me out in one shot. Thrown into a pile of bodies, I'm brought back to life by a mysterious angelic voice. And Dad's pissed. I grab my belt and smack some minions through the ruins to another cutscene where another mysterious man with a gruff voice, not to be confused with the first mysterious masked man with a gruff voice, commands an army of Verds to attack. But this time I'm immortal and they're toast. Literally. Thankfully, the Reaper of Death is no match for me mashing left click on his face. After defeating him, more reinforcements arrive, look around at the massacre of fried rats and tell me I'm actually an immortal. With how late these guys always seem to appear, I'm beginning to think that their war strategy is just to throw grunts at enemies to weed out the immortals from the chaff. Daddy-O here gets taken to the futuristic city of the gods, Alinar. Here I meet a few important characters and are advised as an immortal I will go out, save people, gain followers and thus more power. Finally, I get to pick a class. Breaking out of the prologue, let's get into the core systems. In the training hall, we get to pick one of the 3 base classes out of the 19 total: Paladin, Cryomancer, and Lightbinder. The game operates off of a pseudo-trilogy with tanks, supports, and DPS, but being action-oriented, some classes can kind of blend between the two, and there's no explicit healers. My hero being the fatherly protector he is, I went with Paladin. Depending on the stage of your left-click combo you're at, it changes your right-click to different abilities. First for a cleave, the second does a strong single target lightning strike, and the third does a wide circle lightning AoE. All of these use stamina, which can be regenerated by spamming your left click combo. The Paladin also starts out with a basic shield ability that bursts for damage, and a charged chain lightning ability. Occasionally when doing basic combos, you can proc a bonus for one of your other abilities, which for the Paladin makes chain lightning free and instantly cast. Finally, they also showed off a taste of the God form, which has the same abilities, but you're taller, hotter, and have a cool ult. As you play through missions with the class, you unlock its remaining abilities and some extra passives. For Paladin, there was a charge ability, a CC shield, and this pretty insane wave AoE. A Holy Ground which when placed gives bonuses, and a Dive Bomb ultimate. There's no vertical progression for the classes or customization. All of that is done on the entire character through bastions and later on when you unlock godhood. Classes being entirely horizontal means you can switch up your gameplay at any time, which definitely feels like a strength of the game and was one of the original selling points too. I ended up switching to the Outlaw class, which didn't have any combos but instead uses debuff stacking and contextual attacks. You have a charge shot ability and a grenade as your first and second abilities. Your basic attack applies a stack that makes your charge shot do more damage, and your secondary spins and shoots anyone near you. Or if you dash forward with the first ability, you fly ahead and do a point blank shot, or backwards to do a sniping shot. In dual stance, you put your guns away and quick draw, alternating left and right shots to do bonus damage or a different AoE attack. Unfortunately, I didn't get to try too many more of the classes, which will start to make sense as we look at the monetization later. The story continues and I'm dropped into various missions along the Yellow Path questline. Most of these are 1 to 3 people small adventures that involve killing mobs, saving people, and a mini boss or two in between. One thing I did appreciate was when I stepped off into this unmarked side path, I found an optional enemy, who even dropped some gear to use. Another type of mission is this open world type, where you drop into an open area and have to do various quest lines and side missions. The first one I unlocked was fairly linear, but this second one was very open. As you do these missions, you get various currencies and resources. Knowledge gets researched at the aptly named Tower of Knowledge, granting you might and battle consumables, whereas credits are used to perform rituals to gain followers as well as divine augmentations, which are buffs that affect you that day through prayer. In my search to figure out what might actually did, I came across a top comment telling me to uninstall this fucking corpse and not waste time on this piece of shit. But I pressed on and found out that might affects the power level of the gear you're allowed to equip, which increases your prestige and lets you join harder missions. I pushed through to the third act and was getting pretty clear how things were put together. There wasn't any sense of challenge or progression so far, so I tried to matchmake to see what a dungeon looked like, but that clearly wasn't going to happen. Instead, I tried to look for party members the only way this dashing dad would know how to. Dance. I tried it on this dashing Des Mume, and she had her walls up, literally. But Enchanted Raven had her eyes on me from across the room. The bondage between us was strong, and an immediate match. Raven offered to take me through the dungeon, which I definitely wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. When we got in, Raven transformed into her Elder God form for the rest of the dungeon. Strangely enough, getting into battle, my health and damage went up from a few thousand to the millions, and I was keeping up. It turns out that dungeons scale you up, once again making the 5-man dungeon between the two of us a breeze. There wasn't really any noteworthy mechanics in the dungeon, as I suspect any difficulty was beaten out of the game after a decade of reworks, balance changes, and stat squishes. I did learn more about the Soundweaver class though, who is a support that plays an electric guitar and puts down amps that blast music in-game and give various buffs to allies and debuffs to enemies. Wrapping up the dungeon involved a final boss fight who almost set off a mechanic before dying, resulting in a hefty reward compared to what I've seen before. The frustrating thing about these fights ending early is that even though the game has some good combat, I can hardly ever get a single rotation or combo off before enemies fall over like paper, even in the supposedly harder content. Other than the main story, there are optional side missions for fun. I played this racing minigame, which works as well as you'd expect with server-based movement and jumping with 200 plus ping.
Drop it!
After 5 hours of semi-inefficient play, I had only 1/4 of what was needed to unlock a new class by default, and that was with welcome bonuses. And I barely scratched the surface of the 900 million might that is recommended to be reached to participate in the endgame properly. Even if I were to push through the entire main story, it appears the main grind will be repeating missions and dailies, a frustrating grind for the sake of grind. However, naturally, the game is heavily monetized. You can buy literally anything with Argents, the paid currency bought in amounts to leave you with just enough to want some more. Premium subscription to give you double credits, reminded at the end of every mission. Classes, knowledge, credits, season passes, mounts that increase your speed almost double over the freebie one, VIP ranks with more daily bonuses only achievable by swiping, legendary best in slot weapons that are on a rotating daily shop to give you that little bit of FOMO, and this event is literally impossible without premium currency. You get 1 point every 8 hours unless you grind specific bosses for 10 skip items per point, and you need 3,000 to finish the event in 2 weeks. Or you can pay. Any mobile gaming tier dark pattern you can think of, it's here. It's my understanding that you can earn all of these resources, including Argents, so there is some defense that none of this is pay to win, but instead pay to progress, but it appears that the design is intentionally intrusive and frustrating to encourage paying. The Steam page isn't listed anymore, but you can still access the reviews with a quick Google search, and you'll find the community sentiment surrounding this. Perhaps one of the worst MMORPGs I've ever had the mispleasure of playing. Disclaimer, it's fine if you like this game, I like it, but I'll still criticize it to hell. Don't let the beautiful graphics and good action combat fool you. This game was maliciously developed to make you feel frustrated in order to convince you to spend money. It used to be a great game a few years back. World created by Obsidian, MMO experience provided by Allard's team. A match made in heaven, it would seem. I was in the beta and played avidly through the first year up until the Ascension expansion. That's where a cool game suddenly became linear, dull, and dumbed down to oblivion. No more strategizing, prioritizing quests or dungeons to expand your character, etc. Even this positive review says it is, however, an extremely grindy game. You can go the wallet warrior way, spending real cash to remove the timers, but this would cost you a real life fortune. If you can't refrain your impulses to go faster and faster because you want to level up super fast and be super strong, then this game isn't for you. So intense grinds, monetized dark patterns, and a history of being good in the past. A story we've seen before, but what did the game used to look like? In truth, I've played Skyforge before. It was 10 years ago, and I remember being excited and having a lot of positive feelings towards it. But this time around, I pretty quickly noticed something was off. The characters mention how followers are the way to gain power in the game, multiple times, and to ascend. And yet, the follower system was extremely bare bones. Picking up a class and getting new skills, all the progression was very flat. The fact that any dungeon or level felt exactly the same was odd. 10 years ago, this is what Skyforge looked like. The Ascension Update. This update was a complete rewrite of many of the pre-existing systems from Allard's and Obsidian Entertainment. Classes were simplified and systems were overhauled, mostly reduced. Before this update, and perhaps others, here's a quick breakdown into how things worked. Adventures are unlocked through your prestige, increased by your gear and your character and class progressions. Adventures cycle between different rewards, currencies, and multipliers, incentivizing you to change things up, but also letting you choose what you want to focus on. Each class had a pool of customizable passive talents and swappable abilities, which you could slot where you liked. These were all unlocked through something called the Ascension Atlas, a system where you spend a variety of currencies to unlock nodes that give stats and abilities. It starts linear, but opens up to give you more choice about where you want to go first and build your character. Beyond that, you can upgrade your entire character as well. In this larger scale Ascension Atlas, you give your character permanent stats and upgrades, and work towards various classes you're interested in on the tree to unlock them. Opposed to being a simple number and currency dump, Followers was an entire system called the Order. Here, as you gain followers, you recruit adepts, who you will send with some resources on time missions to gain new followers. Recruited adepts can serve as patrons at temples that you build to increase your stat modifiers, all of your choosing, and making you more powerful as you grow your order and worshippers. These systems, while complex, created a unique way to build your character that was chock full of flavor and was more meaningful in the world you lived in. I will point out that it's not without fault. The grind was still heavy and made it easier through pay to progress and premium. But from the research I could find, the various dark patterns to entice people to pay were not as severe until after the Ascension update. Additionally, currencies and rewards had weekly caps, meaning people felt a little bit worse when starting late and being unable to catch up. Outside of these major progression systems, over time a lot of pretty cool features were stripped away. The Alinet, which is an in-lore internet, was nowhere to be found in my play sessions, but in the past it acted as an in-game notice board complete with forums, wiki, people posting comments about tips for specific classes against bosses, and even an in-game build editor with shareable links. I suppose without any builds, you don't really need a build editor. Anecdotally, the combat I did see was more interesting too. Even in the 3-man fights, you would need to dodge and actually play the video game instead of face roll everything in your path. It's hard to have a 0 to hero progression power fantasy when you somehow deal millions of damage in the first dungeon you get carried through. Skyforge follows the player's journey from a nobody to divine ascension, and I did quite enjoy the concept. But it always felt like something was missing. The game always billed itself as this blend of myth and sci-fi, a world where you literally ascend to godhood. On paper, that's incredible. In practice, not so much. The Ascension update was supposed to be one of the first major expansions, but instead it killed the love loyal fans had and failed to capture a new audience at the same time. Some of the changes were divisive, but one point was unanimous: the removal of abilities and class customization. Developers always struggle with the balance between accessibility and engaging complexity. But without the ability to cultivate my followers, create my hero, and take a path to godhood that wasn't just a literal line on a map, it was hard to feel invested in the already stilted storyline. Ultimately, Skyforge's legacy didn't end with passionate, forlorn fans like Wildstar, but a player base so jaded they'd tell newcomers asking basic questions to uninstall and never look back. And that's Skyforge, a game that promised godhood but couldn't escape mortality. If you played it back in the day or even stuck with it until recently, let me know your memories in the comments. Otherwise, consider this your last look. Unlike playing Skyforge, liking and subscribing is totally free, and actually unlocks more videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.